Lawman, who mowed down Bonnie and Clyde, inspires Netflix. The Highwaymen World News Mirror Online. Exclusive: Frank Hammer and his Remington Model 8 rifle ended the crime spree of Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow, and now his story is being retold. For almost 9 hours, they had watched the pine tree-lined dirt road as the night turned into a bright Louisiana morning. Finally came a noise to disturb the dewy stillness, a car traveling at such high speeds those who were there said it was singing like a sewing machine. Veteran lawman Frank Hammer stepped out from his hiding place in the roadside brush, bringing the flying Ford V8 Ford to a sharp halt. With his back directly to the rising sun, forcing anyone looking at him from the vehicle to squint, he cried, "Stick 'em up," as the rest of the ambush posse emerged from the surrounding woods. Facing such insurmountable odds, even the hardest of criminals would have done as ordered. But Clyde Barrow and Bonnie Parker were not only high on their own notoriety but well aware that if caught their lives were as likely to end on the gallows as here in the dirt. Bonnie and Clyde reached for their deadly arsenal, more than a dozen weapons and 3,000 rounds of ammunition, and so did the law. Hammer pulled the trigger fast on his Remington Model 8 rifle, and his comrades let fly a hail of lead flying for the outlaws and creating so much noise people nearby thought a logging crew was using dynamite. "That witness with a sharp ear," said Bonnie, screamed like a panther as the battle began. It was over in sec. During that time, 187 bullets had hit the car as well as the young lovers, in their chests, faces and heads. Since that day on May 23, 1934, the legend of Bonnie and Clyde, aged 23 and 25 when they died, has grown, making them the anti-heroes of blood-soaked folk tales. But the real hero now, finally, he is being recognized as such in new film, The Highwaymen Out Now, in which he is played by Kevin Costner. And none are more pleased than his family, who have had to watch him ridiculed in retellings, including the 1967 Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway film Bonnie and Clyde, where Denver Pyle, best known as Uncle Jesse from The Dukes of Hazzard, played a blundering Hammer. In an exclusive interview, Harrison Hammer, one of only 3 surviving relatives who knew Captain Frank, says, "At last, we feel we have the justice we deserve." Bonnie and Clyde were no Robin Hoods, as they've been portrayed. They were pure and simple murderous thugs. The cruelest of killers. Once, after murdering 2 officers, Bonnie is said to have walked up to one of the dead men and took a C*** on his chest. She was no sweetheart who was roped in for the ride. She was as much of, "It galls me that they have been depicted as they have been, while my great-uncle was cast by some as the bad guy." To have Bonnie and Harrison, 82, is Hammer's great-nephew and is proud of his great-uncle's achievement and that of his famous crime-fighting family. He tells how Hammer, one of 4 law enforcement brothers, was legendary long before he gunned down Bonnie and Clyde on a rural road in Gippsland, Louisiana. He was an indispensable member of the Texas Rangers, who battled bank robbers, bootleggers, outlaw Mexicans, and Native Americans in the Lone Star State and along the southern U.S. border in the 19th and early 20th centuries. The group was brutal, fighting fire with fire. Their tactics led. During his career, he saved 15 African Americans from lynch mobs. 6 years later, Hammer put a halt to a murder-for-hire ring, and his extraordinary means of accomplishing this made him famous nationally. The Texas Bankers Association had begun offering rewards of $5,000 for dead bank robbers, not 1 cent for live ones, Harrison, of Early, Texas, explains. Uncle Frank knew men were setting up deadbeats and 2-bit outlaws to be killed by complicit police officers. The officers would collect the rewards and pay the men their finder's fees. Uncle Frank Hammer also became known for his ability to control riots and his patient, skilled investigative work. And his gun. He resigned in 1932 when Miriam Ma Ferguson, who detested the Rangers and is played by Kathy Bates in the Netflix film, took the governor's office. He turned to mostly private investigation work, and so came the job of hunting down Bonnie and Clyde. They were public enemy number one after a 3-year robbery spree across the South, which claimed at least 13 lives, including 9 police officers. Part of the larger Barrow gang, after 102 days Hammer's detective work led him to a mail drop by that dusty highway in Louisiana, where the outlaws would meet their violent end. Here, the gang would leave messages for each other, far from the sight of the law, or so they thought. Before his death, an officer must know the habits of the outlaw, how he thinks and how he will act in different situations. When I began to understand Clyde Barrow's mind, I felt that I was making progress, he said. In the 1967 film, Hammer is seen being humiliatingly captured by the Barrow gang before he then hunts them down for revenge. In reality, he was never captured, and when his family saw this portrayal, they sued the film's producers for defamation of character and settled out of court. In The Highwaymen, Costner plays Hammer with a growl, a slow gait and a steadfast sense of right and wrong. His depiction of Hammer is the most genuine the Lawman's family has seen. What many people who see the movie may not pick up on is how quiet my uncle was, says Harrison, who during his 28-year Air Force career was once stationed in Suffolk. Long before he captured Bonnie and Clyde, had caught so many criminals. He was put into Uncle Frank survived 52 gunfights and was shot several times, but no one could finish him off. He was made of straw. He was brought up hunting, and that is how he became a good shot. Uncle Frank could shoot the eye out of a snake. I'd ask him, and despite the cult build-up around Bonnie and Clyde, his work was rightly admired all over the world. Scotland Yard invited him to London in the mid-1930s to act as an advisor. Uncle Frank was approached to go to the UK, but it never came off, Harrison says. I think the fact they wanted him shows how much he was respected not just in America but the world as well. The cult of Bonnie and Clyde lives on. Recently, and judging by the memorial stone on that dirt road in Gippsland marking the scene of their deaths, misguided affection for them shows no signs of abating. Countless couples have scrawled their names across the surface in tribute. Hammer, who never wanted fame, would be shocked. Harrison says, after putting an end to Bonnie and Clyde, they wanted to honor him with a congressional dinner. He said, if he were alive, he'd be hugely embarrassed by the attention he is now getting. But he'd be equally
raindrop, drop top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park,